Would you like to learn how to download and import transactions directly from your bank into your QuickBooks desktop software? Would you like to save lots and lots of time doing QuickBooks work by using the special bank feeds feature? Well, if that's the case, then you need to watch this video, QuickBooks Desktop, Bank Feeds, and Importing Transactions. My name is Mark Smolin. I'm the founder and CEO of Worldwide QuickBooks. I personally guarantee you the clearest possible explanation for every possible topic that you could need to learn if you're downloading, importing, and classifying transactions using QuickBooks Desktop Bank Feeds feature. In this special QuickBooks Desktop training tutorial, you will learn the benefits of using the Bank Feeds feature, such as avoiding duplicate transactions and limiting the amount of mistakes that you can actually make. You will see how to set up QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions with the Bank Feeds feature. I'm going to show you how to connect to your bank, download the transactions, and import transaction list files into the review list. You will see how to classify and categorize transactions from the review list in the banking section. And of course, we will learn all about how to create rules, which are the things that save you massive amounts of time when using the QuickBooks Desktop Bank Feeds feature. In fact, you will learn the best practices for managing bank transactions, such as matching and unmatching transactions, and even importing QBO and CSV files from Excel. This feature works with all bank and credit card accounts, and every import option into QuickBooks Desktop will be shown here with the clearest possible explanation. I want all my students to know that I answer all your questions immediately. So even though the videos are Sesame Street clear, you can still ask me questions in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to help you. You can completely master the QuickBooks Desktop Bank Feeds feature just by watching a little bit of this video every day. And there are even practice exercises that you can do if you want to check your knowledge. All this right here on YouTube, and it's all free. Now you may well ask, why would we bother importing the transactions from our bank account? Well, the reason is that you can do everything you learned in QuickBooks Desktop, but much faster if you do those very same things using the QuickBooks Desktop Bank Feeds feature. You see, the bank records the same transactions that you do because they are required to keep records of our transactions in their account. So why not download what they're recording to save us time? Why not simply copy the bank's records? Well, there are several reasons why we should not simply blindly and directly copy what the bank recorded. First of all, the bank does not know what category of each expense or check really is. So they cannot tell us what category to record that check in our QuickBooks records. Secondly, the bank does not know what category of income each deposit is. And we may receive income for different reasons that we would like to track in different income accounts, and the bank cannot know which deposits get categorized into which particular income accounts. The bank also does not know which customer or vendor was involved in the transaction. They may put the name of the person in the description field, but that doesn't mean that we can choose the correct customer or vendor just from what downloads from the bank. And of course, the most important reason not to simply blindly copy what the bank has is the fact that banks also make mistakes. They're made up of people just like us, and they can make mistakes in their records the same way that we can make mistakes in ours. So how does the bank feeds feature address those 4 points so we can copy the bank's transactions and save time? Well, first, all of the bank transactions get downloaded into a separate review list before they go into QuickBooks Desktop. You must look at the review list and approve each one to make sure it's a real and legitimate transaction. You also must choose the account classification, such as which expense does the check go with, or which income account does the deposit go with, and so on. Remember, the bank can't know that, but you do know that and can put it more quickly if you're putting it in the review list instead of entering the transaction yourself. And of course, you can automate some of the tasks, so if you know some of them will always get categorized a certain way, you can create rules that will save you massive amounts of time. Then once you've confirmed that everything is correct and ready to go, you can then save the transactions from the review list into your actual QuickBooks Desktop records. So it's really a vital feature to use, especially if you are a self-employed bookkeeper who needs to expedite their QuickBooks work. So I want you to enjoy the Bank Feeds and Importing Transactions course, and I'd also like you to have more control over which topics you'd like to view, even though the first time you watch the video, you should watch it in proper order. But there is a table of contents in the description field. So if you click below the kitty, you can open the description field and see the full table of contents. Now, when you're looking at the table of contents, you can click on a particular chapter's time index, and YouTube will jump the video over right to the time index that you just clicked on, so you can go directly to the topic you're looking for. And again, you can find that information by clicking below the kitty, and if you need to open up the description field to find the information, then just look for the Show More button at the end. That will open up the description field and allow you to see all the information in the field, including the table of contents. In fact, if you look down below the table of contents, way at the bottom, you will see that there are links to the files that you can download for the self-checking exercise, where you can check how much you learned and understood from this video by completing the practice material and the self-paced exercise. There's an Excel file with instructions, and it even has transactions that you can import into a blank, brand new QuickBooks Desktop file, so that you can use that file exclusively for the practice exercise here. I thank you very much for watching this video, and I'm absolutely sure that you will be an expert in using the QuickBooks Desktop Bank Feeds feature when you finish this video.
Chapter 3. Setting Bank Feeds Preferences.
There are 3 different views, or let's say 3 different modes that you can choose from when using the Bank Feeds Center. You can open the Bank Feeds Center in Classic mode, or Express mode, or Advanced mode. All 3 modes are chosen from the Preferences window. And we all remember our good friend, the Preferences window. We can click Edit from the main menu, and then click Preferences to open this very important window. And once you're in the Preferences window, you should select the category of checking and then the tab Company Preference. By making these choices, you will open the Bank Feeds preferences and be able to choose a different mode when viewing the Bank Feeds Center. And again, you have a choice of 3 modes: Classic mode, or Express Mode, or Advanced Mode. And these three choices are new starting in 2021. All three of these modes allow you to enter transactions from the review list. And all three allow you to match or disregard any downloaded transactions. Classic mode will look like this. And you can see you can add or disregard or match the transactions that are listed at the bottom. And when you add them to your QuickBooks records, they'll show up in the top section here. But the other two modes are much more common and popular. There's Express Mode and there's Advanced Mode. Now, Express Mode is the one that was available for all the years of bank feeds up until 2021 when they added this Advanced Mode. And you might ask, what's the difference? Well, both of them give you the ability to import transactions. Both of them give you the ability to add transactions. Both of them give you the ability to match to existing transactions or disregard a transaction that was wrongfully downloaded. You could also sort both of them by their column headings, and both of them give you the ability to add what we call rules that will make entering repetitive transactions much more quickly. But Advanced Mode has additional functionality that they added after 2021. If you open it in Advanced Mode, you will see that you're also able to add to every recorded transaction a field for customer or job. You can even add class to a transaction before you record it. And you can make more complex rules than you made in Express Mode, and you could actually search for transactions within the review list if you're in Advanced Mode. Now, Express Mode is the way that it looked for well over a decade, and it was the only mode available. Most of the course will be presented to you in Express Mode because most of the functionality is performed the same, whether it's in Express Mode or Advanced Mode. However, it's usually enough for most people to use Express Mode, and that makes things much more convenient. Advanced Mode looks like this, which, except for the color changes, is very similar. So you may ask, what's the difference between Advanced Mode and the Express Mode that I was looking at a moment ago? Well, you will see that most of the functionality that is in both Advanced Mode and Express Mode can be done just with Express Mode. And that's why I saved the 2 videos for Advanced Mode to the end of the course. This way, we can highlight clearly what the differences are and focus on just the extra special functions that QuickBooks has added in 2021 to make bank feeds much easier if you need Advanced Mode.
Chapter 4. Setting up bank feeds.
The setup steps are very simple. First, you call your financial institution to confirm that you will be downloading transactions from your online banking into your QuickBooks file, and they will activate the service. You might have to pay a fee. You then go to the bank feeds in the main menu and select your financial institution. This means choose your bank or PayPal or whomever you do your banking with. In my example, I'll be using my Chase Online bank account on my QuickBooks desktop. Once they're downloaded, you match the accounts in your QuickBooks file to the accounts in your online banking. This way, QuickBooks knows which particular bank account online goes to which particular account in your chart of accounts. So from the main menu, click Banking, Bank Feeds, Set up bank feeds for an account. Now, of course, you see QuickBooks is connecting to the internet. and it's finding out which financial institutions make this service available. After it connects, the first thing it asks you to do is type in the name of your financial institution. I happen to know if you have Chase Bank, you should not choose JP Morgan from this list. You should choose Chase. I was told that by the customer service representatives when I originally tried to connect my QuickBooks. So if you have a different financial institution, you will have to follow their instructions. I click Chase, and now it's going to ask me my Chase username and password. Of course, it tells you all the different pieces of information you might need, and of course, in the case of Chase Bank, there's a specific customer service number you could call for this particular service if you have a problem setting it up. I'm going to click Continue, and now I'm going to put in my username and password, and of course it'll be blurred out, but you get the idea. Then I click Connect, and then I get this screen. And this screen is asking me to match my particular bank accounts and credit card accounts over at Chase, match with the accounts that are bank type of accounts in the QuickBooks file that I am currently in. So I already set up the QuickBooks chart of accounts to have the matching numbers. So premium plus checking is 8205. So let's see, premium checking 8205. What about business checking 3565, business checking 3565, and so on? These are my three Chase Bank accounts, Chase credit card accounts, and I would, if they were company credit card accounts, I would match them to company credit card accounts the same way. After I match the accounts online to the accounts in my QuickBooks, I click Connect. Then I confirm and I click Close. Congratulations! This current QuickBooks file is now connected to the online banking center for my bank. Now you'll notice that your Bank Feeds menu now includes the Bank Feeds Center. Let's take a look. Okay, from the main menu, click Banking, Bank Feeds, and this choice is here. Bank Feeds Center is a brand new menu choice now that you set it up. When we click, we look at the Bank Feeds Center. Now let's talk about this button over here, Download Transactions. You see, the Download Transactions button will only say Download Transactions if the review list, meaning the list that you downloaded from your bank to review, only if that list is empty. If that list is not empty, it will say Transaction List instead of Download Transactions. So let's take a look. We come back to QuickBooks, and you can see these are the two bank accounts that are connected to the QuickBooks accounts. And now I'm going to click here. I'll have to move this slightly over a little here, and I'll click Download Transactions. Okay? Oops. Got to put the PIN or password for the bank account each time that you download. Okay? Now you can see it's updating the transactions. 138 new transactions for account business checking 3565. Click Close, and now you can see the button no longer says Download Transactions. It says Transaction List. And if we click on it, we get a list of the transactions that were downloaded into a file, but they are not in QuickBooks yet. Now in this video, we will not take any action. I just want to show you how to navigate the transaction list that opens in the Bank Feeds Center. It's very simple. You can see it's arranged in date order from the earliest, because I'm filming today on July 12th, all the way back to the latest it could possibly go to, which in this case is July of 2015. So I have 137 transactions spread out over 2 years, basically 2 years worth of transactions, earliest to oldest. I could flip that. I can make it the oldest to the earliest by clicking the date heading and on top of the date column. Watch, it'll flip from July of 2017 to July of 2015, date.
See? Now it's from oldest to newest, and the 2017 ones are down at the bottom. So I'm going to click once to flip it back. You could also arrange it by type by filtering it out. Some are deposits and some are checks and payments. If you click all types and you click check, you'll get only the payments and nothing else, no deposits or any other kind of special entries. If you flip it and you say, I want to see only the deposits, then you'll see only the deposits. And again, whatever you choose will be earliest to oldest. What if you, actually we should switch it back to all types to make it clear. Another nice thing is that you can change the date range. You can see QuickBooks knows this goes from July of 2015 to July of 2017. But if we want only June of 2016, we could simply move this forward, for example, to June of 2016, June 1, June of 2016, this one you should make June 30th. And now there were only 2 transactions in this account during the month of June 2016. So you could always change the date range back. You could either type it in or just click really fast to go back to the beginning. I believe it was July of 2015 to July of 2017. And here we are. And now we have all the transactions again. Now, you may also notice that you can filter by the status. Now, right now, we only have transactions that need review. But in future videos, I will be talking about auto match, and you could filter it down to see only the ones that are auto matched. In future videos, I'll be talking about those that were changed by rules, and you could see only those if you want to. You should note that no transaction will be entered into QuickBooks without approval. What you'll have to do is take some action. You have a choice of adding the transaction as is, because sometimes QuickBooks will suggest the information to put in, and then you can just click Add As. You could modify the transaction as you add. You can apply the checks to bills that you want to pay, or you can apply deposits to invoices that you sent out to customers, which, by the way, this is a new feature since 2014. You could match the transactions in the review list to existing transactions that you have already entered in QuickBooks, or you could ignore. And all of these options are things that we will explore in future videos. The way to take action on one of these items is to click in the row of the item and go all the way across to the column of action. Then you choose what you want to do with it. Do you want to add it? Do you want to add more details? Do you want to pay bills or apply to invoices? Do you want to match it to an existing transaction that you entered, or ignore it completely because it might be wrong, or you might not want to match it because you might have other reasons, and we'll talk about those reasons in future videos. Okay, the only remaining thing that I want to show you about this transaction list window, which is basically the review list, are the 2 fields that reflect the description from the bank. Now I'm going to show you inside my Chase activity of my actual business bank account, and as you can see, first of all, you can see I'm very unsuccessful in business, but that's not the point. The point is that these are the transactions in my business checking account that was just downloaded. And of course it has the date and the type, description, debit, credit, and the balance. The most important thing I'd like you to pay attention to is the description field. The description field that comes from the bank is the most important field, and you will see why this is in later videos. But I have to show you something very important. The entire description in the one description field in the bank account is actually split into 2 different fields in the transaction list and the review list. You might think that the field called Downloaded As is the same as the description. Look, 7-Eleven, Chase Quick Pay Electronic TR. Oh, let's just make the column wider. The same way you would in reports or in Excel. Move the mouse between the column headings till you get the double arrow. Click and drag and make it wider. Now I made it much wider, but you can still see it's not the complete description. Chase Quick Pay Electronic Transfer. That's cut off. Chase Quick Pay Electronic Transfer, and it shows all the information. So what do we need to do to get the rest of the information in? There's a box here. You can click the check mark, Show Bank Memo. And that basically, well, we have to stretch this out. That basically shows you the other half of the bank's description. It's the other half. In fact, if I change the column width, I could fit it perfectly, but I would have to go transaction by transaction. So it's really unusual. It makes you click this check mark to see the remainder of the bank memo or the bank description in this field that doesn't show. And the first half of the description shows in this field, which is cut off. So you have to click this check mark and widen this column in order to make sure that you can see the entire description. Look, I'll prove it to you. This next one was an online payment to American Express, and this is the entire text written out. Now when I look at that same transaction in the Bank Feed Center, online payment to Capital One by Power Card. Okay, that's the $30 on the 5th. Am I looking at the right one? Yeah, it's this one. This one's the $30 on the 5th. The $45 bill payment to American Express, well, let's see. Actually, that's this one. Online payment to American Express. So you can see that this very important column that shows the entire description, very important, becomes challenging because it's split between two fields, one of which you have to click to show, and the other you have to stretch to see the whole thing. Please note, each transaction can be downloaded only once. If you deleted it from QuickBooks or clicked Ignore in the transaction list, you cannot download it ever again. You would have to enter it manually or download a Web Connect file from your bank. And we will be talking about Web Connect files and all of these scenarios in future videos in this course.
Chapter 5. Adding Transactions.
Transactions are downloaded now, but they're not yet entered into our QuickBooks records. They are in the Review section of the bank feeds. They will not affect your financial records until they are added. You must choose an account before being allowed to add a transaction to QuickBooks. For deposits, it's usually an income type of account. For checks, it's usually an expense type of account, but it could be a transfer to another bank type of account. So be aware when you're choosing the account that goes with the transaction that was downloaded. You don't have to choose a name like customer if it's a deposit or vendor if it's a check, but it helps to do so. For example, let's add the June 22nd ATM withdrawal, and we will put delivery expense as the account, and we'll put the vendor name as UPS. So we come back to QuickBooks. Now, this is the one we want to add. Now, how will we know if it has already been added? Well, it's very simple. It will disappear in a snap from this review list. Well, what will that look like? It means this 200 will be gone, and you will not see June 22nd. You will see June 21 and June 30, but you will not see the June 22nd ATM once we add it. So all you have to do is go all the way to the right of that row, or excuse me, you have to put an account. So click in the account column and you choose, we said it was delivery expense. And click the payee because we said it helps to add a vendor, UPS. So this ATM withdrawal will be recorded as a payment to UPS for delivery expense. Now that it's ready, we click Select and we click Quick Add. Boom. Now, it looks like it disappeared, but it's in QuickBooks. Again, you see June 21 and you see June 30, but June 22nd, the ATM for the 200 has disappeared because now it's in QuickBooks. So let's check inside QuickBooks to see if it's there. We'll check the register for the account. Banking, use register, and this is the correct bank account that we're going to choose, and you can see it has been added. How do I know this is the correct one? Because this is an empty file with no transactions until I downloaded the bank fees. So now I can see it is now in the register, and you can see there's a lightning bolt there indicating that this was recorded from the bank fee center. We can also check the trial balance, and you notice business checking now has a $200 credit and delivery expense now has $200. When I open up the business checking, I get the same thing I got from the register, a list of transactions for this bank account, and the lightning bolt is there to indicate that it was recorded from the bank feed center. So it might be important to make a note that the lightning bolt indicates it was added from the bank feed center. Now please note, once you added a transaction from the bank feed center into QuickBooks Desktop, you cannot send it back to the review section in the bank feeds window. You would have to edit or delete it like any other transaction that you recorded manually into QuickBooks. That's how this works. One more example. Let's add the 7-Eleven online deposit as income, this one, income from teaching service, and the customer is Mark. Well, that's very simple. Let's close these windows. Okay, we're looking for the July 11th, which is right up here, 7-Eleven. I received $200. So the instructions say that the account that goes in is an income account, income from teaching service, and the payee is Mark. Now that we have the correct name and the correct account, we can add it to our QuickBooks records. Click the pull down, choose Quick Add. Okay, now it's suggesting a rule. And we will make rules later, and we will learn all about rules, but I would be very careful when accepting one of the suggestions to create a rule. Remember, QuickBooks doesn't always know what you know. So in this case, I would remove the check mark and click OK. Now, let's check to see if it was recorded into QuickBooks. Banking, use register. Make sure you're choosing the correct bank account. Click OK. Here it is. $200 deposit with the lightning bolt, and the account is income. And you can look at your trial balance and see you now have income 200, expense 200, and that's why your checking account is 0. And you can double click and see there's a debit of 200 and a credit of 200, both of which have been added from the Bank Feeds Center.
Chapter 6. Matching Transactions.
Matching transactions involves telling QuickBooks which downloaded bank transactions have already been entered into QuickBooks. This prevents entering the same transaction twice. Now, what happens when you match a transaction? Well, the transaction disappears from the review list permanently. Guess what? That's it. That's all you're doing. You're telling QuickBooks to disregard what was downloaded because it was already entered properly. However, you should note that if the money amounts are different, it will change the amount in the QuickBooks file to the amount downloaded from the bank. For example, let's match the July 5th payment of $30 downloaded from the bank to the July 5th payment to FedEx for delivery. So let's take a look at this now. Here we are in QuickBooks, and here's my register for this particular bank account. Now, July 5th, there was a $30 charge to FedEx for delivery. You may also notice that July 5th is the very latest transaction in the review list in the bank feeds. Now, I purposely made them 1 penny different. I purposely made them 1 cent different so that you can see when I go to match this one with that one, it's going to change the money amount to the money amount that was downloaded to the bank from the bank. So all you have to do is click anywhere in the row, go all the way to the right, and then click Match to Existing Transaction. Now, as soon as you do that, you will get a list of all of the transactions in that account, or specifically all of the checks that were paid from that account that have not yet been matched. And all you have to do is click on the one that you are matching. Actually, if you click this, you could show all, but you click on the one and it's warning you that the amounts don't match. So when you click Confirm Match, the amount in the QuickBooks will be changed to the downloaded amount. That's all you have to do. Choose the one and then click Confirm Match. The amount of QuickBooks transaction will be changed to the downloaded amount. Are you sure? Yes. Now notice, poof, the July 5th for $30 is now gone. It has been added to the register here, and now you can see the lightning bolt here tells you that it came from the register. We know it was matched, but notice it no longer says $30.01. It says $30 because it changed the amount to the amount that was downloaded by the bank. Now, let's do another one. Let's match the July 5th payment of $45 downloaded from the bank to the July 5th payment to Uber for transportation. Well, here's the July 5th payment to Uber. Notice I purposely made it $45.01 instead of just $45. But these are the two that match. So when I click here and I click Match to Existing, again, there's only one remaining check in the account that has not yet been matched. So all you have to do is click on it. Now notice the amount downloaded was $45. The amount that I recorded was $45.01. When we click Confirm Match, we get a warning telling us that it's going to change the amount in QuickBooks to the amount that was downloaded. Are we sure? Yes. Notice it's gone. That $45 for July 5th, there's no longer any July 5th 2017 transactions here. They're gone from the review list because two of them, see, here's the review list, and here's the two that were added. When we click this, we can see the lightning bolt is now placed here, which means it came from or was adjusted by the Bank Feed Center, changing it to the amount that was actually downloaded. You can even match deposits as well. For example, let's match the July 3rd $200 deposit downloaded from the bank to the July 3rd deposit from Joe for website services. So if we come here and we look at the register, we can see on July 3rd we received from Joe $200. I put 201, but it was 200, and we're going to match this 200 to this deposit that was downloaded from the bank that has the date on July 3rd. All we have to do is click in the row, in the same row, but all the way to the right, click it Match to Existing. Now what's showing up here is every deposit in the account that has not yet been matched to a transaction in the Review Center for Bank Feeds. Again, all you have to do is click on the transaction you want to match, click Confirm Match. Remember, I purposely made it 1 penny different so that you can see it will change it to the amount that's in that was downloaded. Click Yes. Notice that July 3rd is gone. It is no longer in the Review Center. But if we click here to the ones we added, the register opens up and you can see the July 3rd deposit from Joe now has a lightning bolt, and it does not say $201, it says $200. Let's do one more for good measure. Let's match the June 21st $100 deposit, which was downloaded from the bank, to the June 21st deposit from Mark for website services. And that's basically the same thing. We're basically matching this $100 here to this $100 here. Again, all you have to do is go in the row and click Match to Existing. There's only one possible deposit that you can match anything to, and it's 1 penny different. Confirm the match. It warns us the amounts are different, and it will change it to the bank's amount. Click Yes. And now when we look at the register, we see it doesn't say $100. It doesn't say $100 and 1 penny. It says $100. So this will help you help prevent you from double entering or entering duplicate entries for transactions that were downloaded from the bank with transactions that were already recorded.
Chapter 7. Fixing Matching Mistakes.
Auto Match is a feature of bank feeds where transactions previously entered into the QuickBooks are matched automatically to downloaded transactions. How does it work? Well, QuickBooks will first compare the newest transaction downloaded to the newest transaction in the QuickBooks file. If the money amounts are the same, it will suggest a match. If the amounts are different, it will compare the second newest transaction in QuickBooks to the downloaded transaction. If the money amounts are then the same, it will suggest a match. And of course, if not, it'll go to the next newest one, and so on. Now, unmatching can be tricky, so I want to be clear how the auto match feature behaves when you unmatch. Let's imagine we have 3 transactions already recorded in our QuickBooks file for $200 each. As soon as we download a $200 transaction from the bank, QuickBooks will suggest that the $200 downloaded matches the latest one. If we unmatch the suggestion, then QuickBooks will immediately suggest that the next newest one should be the one to match with the transaction that downloaded from the bank. If we then click Unmatch, it will then suggest the next newest one, and so on. Now we will demonstrate, but don't be fooled by the illusion. Sometimes it looks like it didn't work. When one transaction is unmatched, QuickBooks immediately matches the next newest transaction with the same amount. The one that was unmatched moves to the review section back in proper date order. For example, let's unmatch the May 31 payment that was matched automatically when I opened the Bank Feed Center. Banking, Bank Feeds, Bank Feed Center. Now, you can see this one hasn't had any transactions downloaded. This is the one we're working with, and we click Transaction List. Now you can see that when we downloaded this, there were 128, but 2 were auto-matched, and 126 need review. If you click only the blue, you will see only the ones that QuickBooks suggested the auto match on. If you click only the yellow, you will see only the ones on the review list. But I'd like you to see them both at the same time, so let's click here where it says status and choose all. This way, the matched ones are all the way down here. And now you can see the behavior. Now we're going to unmatch the May 31 payment. Now here's the May 31 payment. Now watch carefully. When I click unmatch, it will look like it didn't work. It will look like there's another transaction here. It'll look like, there's still 2 transactions, 18 and 200 for the 2 matched. But if you look closely, after I unmatch, you can see this will not be May 31. This will be the next newest one for exactly $18. Watch. I click not a match. Aha. Now it looked like it didn't work because there's still 2 on auto match and this one is the same one. But look at the $18 one. It's not May 31. It's June 30. What if we unmatch it again? Not a match. See? Again, it looks like it didn't work. The $18 is still here, but that's not June 30, that's April 28th. Now, what happened to the original May 31 transaction. It looked like it disappeared. No. If you scroll all the way up, you can see May 31 of 2017, this was the one that was previously auto-matched, and when we clicked unmatched, it shot up into this yellow section, and it took its proper position in date order. What about this one? Let's try, see, well, where is it? It's up in its proper position in date order in the yellow review section. Example 2, let's unmatch the June 13 deposit. Well, if you go to the bottom, you can see here's the June 13 deposit. Now, as soon as I click unmatch, not a match, it looks like it doesn't work because there'll still be a $200 and an $18 for the two auto-matched. But it won't be the June 13th, it'll be the next one. Not a match. See that? 200. It looked like all it did was switch the 200 with the 18 because you still have 2 on auto-match. But if you look closely at the 200, it doesn't say June anymore, it says April. That's a different one. And if we scroll all the way up, we can see that the June 13th for $200 shot up into this yellow section, the review section, and took its proper place in date order. Now that it's unmatched, now we can properly match it to one that we know is the correct one. And that's how you do unmatch with automatch.
Chapter 8. Using Rule.
Rules gives the bank feed center the ability to input the account and input the person associated with the transaction automatically. QuickBooks Bank Feed Center can input the vendor or the customer automatically if you set up a rule. QuickBooks Bank Feed Center can also input the income or expense or the transfer account automatically. The rules are based on the text in the Downloaded As field. So if we go over to QuickBooks and we see the transaction list, you can see there are several columns with many different fields. But the one that the rule is based on is this, Downloaded As. I suggest you make it a little bit wider if QuickBooks cooperates and lets you pull the column wider. Now, I show you in 2 previous videos that if you want, you could click this check mark and get the rest of the bank memo. But be careful. The rule is not based on the text here in the bank memo. The rule is based on the text in this field, Downloaded As. And even though we discussed how they go together to make the complete description that comes from the bank, unfortunately it's only the text in this field that QuickBooks is going to look at when deciding if it should execute a rule. So, for those of you who like to take formal notes, I wrote down these 2 notes. With Chase, the actual description from the online account is split between the Downloaded As field and the bank memo field. Unfortunately, the rules will only look at the text in the Downloaded As field, so you must make your rules according to what you see exactly in this field. For example, let's make a rule that every transaction that says service fee will have Chase Bank as the payee. Well, it's very simple. In the top left of the transaction list, we click Rules. Okay? Now, if we want to make a new rule, all you have to do is go to the bottom left where it says Manage Rules and click Add New. Now, here's the Add New Rules window. First, you have to give it a rule name. So I think that since we said service fee is what we're looking for, I suggest you make the rule name the text that's actually in the field. This way you can copy it and paste it here. Now it says description, but they're really talking about the Downloaded As field. And let's rename the payee to Chase, because if it's a service fee, it means that we're paying Chase. So now, once I save this rule, as soon as I go back to the transaction list and the review list, you will see many of them have been matched and changed. Save. Now I'm going to notice the rule has been added to the rule list. When I close this out, aha, we go back to the transaction list and we can see 24 transactions were changed by rules. The yellow ones are the ones that are still on the review list, and the orange ones are the ones that were changed by rules. We can get there by scrolling all the way down to the orange section, and you can see the status is CHA, abbreviation for the chase, and the payee, in any time it says service fee in the downloaded as field or monthly service fee in the downloaded as field, it changed it to chase. I could click the orange bar here and limit my view to only what's here. I could click the yellow and limit my view to only the other ones if I wanted. Or actually, if you scroll down, you can still get that. So they were changed by rules. But now, unfortunately, we can't enter them. If I click here and I want only the ones changed by rules, I could click this check mark to select all of the ones that were changed by rules and enter them in one shot. The problem, well, look what happens, though, when we try to do it. Add approve up. We can't because we did not yet choose an account to go with these transactions. So we have to go back to the rules, and we have to click the service fee rule, click the check mark because we're going to edit this rule. So click the check mark to tell QuickBooks this is the rule we're editing. Manage rules. Okay, well, actually, I think if you just double-click, you can go back to the rule. Really, you should double-click. Okay, but it's not enough to rename. We have to choose an account. In order to choose an account, we have to click this plus sign and then categorize. Categorize means choose the account that should automatically be placed in the transaction. In this case, we're going to choose bank fees expense. So that is consistent with my instructions. Now let's modify the rule to make the account bank fees expense. So we have the payee as Chase and the account as bank fees expense. Now when I click Save, I can go back to all the ones that were changed by rules, and if I scroll down, you can see, aha, not only does it have Chase as the payee, but now it has bank fees expense as the account, because that's what I set up. Now if I click Batch Actions and I click Add and Approve, they all disappear from the review list, and 24 have been added or approved to the records. And I can click here and open the register, and you can see all of the ones with the lightning bolt are the ones that were just added or approved. Let's try another one. How about we make every transaction that has in the downloaded as field ATM withdrawals have the payee as Mark and the expense as transportation expense? Well, that's very simple. In the bottom left, where it says, first, when you're in the transaction list, you click Rules. Then in the bottom left, Manage Rules, Add New. The name of the rule can be Mark. If the description contains ATM, let's rename the payee field to Mark. Click the plus sign, and let's recategorize it as transportation expense. Now, when I click Save, that means when I come back here, I close this window, if I come back here, 23 have been changed by rules. And if I scroll all the way down, I can see the 23 that have been changed by rules. Notice every time it says ATM here in this field, the payee is changed to Mark and the account is changed to transportation expense. And in Batch Actions, I can approve all of these at once. And now 47 have been added, and there's only 81 remaining. So you can see how these rules will save us time. Now, I'd like to do one more as an example because we haven't done any with income yet. So let's do this one. Let's make a rule that every transaction that says Google has the customer name as Google and the account as income from web service. So we click Rules, Manage Rules, Add New. Okay, let's make the rule name Google. If the description contains Google, then we rename the payee field to Google, click the plus sign, and categorize it as income from website services. Save. Now when we come back, we can see there were 2 payments from Google that I received. One on the 23rd and another one on the 6th. Of course, the one on the 6th was pretty small, but you can see it automatically made the payee as Google and automatically made the income account as income from web services. Now, I can accept these, ignore, add, and approve, and now 49 have been added by rules, and I only need to review the other 79. So you can see how rules help us out. Just a couple of things to note. You must have a rename in each rule. You cannot have a rule that only changes the account. If I try to make a rule with only changing the account, description contains, okay, let's put the word fee. Okay, description contains fee, just for an example. Okay, and I don't want to rename. I only want to categorize to this expense, insurance expense. If I click Save, I get this error message. You have to rename it. You have to put the name before you put the account. And I'd like to close the video by inviting you to explore the criteria of setting rules. In other words, you don't only have to put specific text that is contained in the description when the text contains fee, but then you could add additional criteria by clicking this plus sign. Or the description starts with A, or the description ends with B, or the description matches exactly some specific text, then it can execute the rule down here. So this gives you a lot of flexibility because sometimes you have similar things coming up in the description field and you don't want to confuse 2 transactions that have a very similar description. So you would use this extra criteria to make sure QuickBooks understands which ones to put these accounts and which ones to put the other account.
Chapter 9. Applying downloaded transactions to invoices and bills.
Applying checks and payments to vendors' bills, well, that's a breeze. Applying the payment is the same as paying from the usual Pay Bills window. The results can be seen on the Unpaid Bills report. For example, let's apply the $75 check from May 25th, 2017 to the 2 oldest bills from FedEx. Well, that should be very simple. Here we are in the review list. Now, here we are at the $75 check on May 25th. This is the only $75 check we have for the date May 25th. So we're talking about this one. Now, all we have to do is go to the right of the same row that this check is on and click Select Bills to Mark as Paid. Now, once we're in this window, we simply choose the vendor that has unpaid bills with us. And when we click FedEx, the 3 unpaid bills for FedEx come up. Now, QuickBooks remembers that this was a $75 payment that we're applying. Very simple. If it's to the 2 oldest ones, all we have to do is click the check mark on the oldest one and you see $25 has been applied and $50 is waiting to be applied. When we click the check mark here, there's the other $50. We applied the whole thing. Now, before I click Add to QuickBooks, I want to mention something important. You must apply all of the payment. You cannot generate a credit from the bank feeds window. So if you can't apply the entire $75 check, then you would have to go to the regular Pay Bills window to generate a credit with that vendor. Let me show you what I mean. If we uncheck this, well, we're applying a $75 payment and we're only applying $25 now. If I click Add to QuickBooks, we're going to get an error message. The total amount does not match the downloaded transaction amount! Exclamation point. If you want to do it that way, you have to use the regular Pay Bills window. So let's place the check mark here and apply the entire amount of the check to all or many of the unpaid bills for this vendor. When we click Add to QuickBooks, now it lets us do that. Now, of course, I frown upon rule creation. QuickBooks is suggesting that we take anything that happened to be in the description field at this moment and make a rule that it goes to FedEx. I don't want to do that. Let's just apply the payment and move on. So we click OK, and now if we open the unpaid bills report, we can see for FedEx, those two bills are gone. And they're gone because they're not unpaid anymore. We applied that check. Now, applying deposits to customers' invoices is almost the exact same thing as what we just did with vendors. Applying the payment is the same as paying from the usual receive payment window. And the results can be seen on the Open Invoice report. And if you're advanced in QuickBooks, you can look at the invoice history and you can see it looks the same. For example, let's apply the $60 received on May 8th to invoice number 2 from Joe. And then we'll check the Open Invoice report when we're done. So, here we are. We go here to the Bank Feed Center, and I think we said it was May 8th. All right, so May 8th is down here. Now you'll see once we apply it, it will disappear from the review list. So look closely that the one above is the 9th and the one below is the 2nd. Those will still be there, and the May 8th will be gone after we apply it to the invoices. So on the same row as May 8th, we click Add More Details, and now you can see we have all the open invoices from the customers. And we want to apply it to the invoice for Joe for July 11th. It was invoice number 2. So we'll click the check mark here. Now, the problem is that when you click the check mark, it assumes you're paying the whole amount. You then have to come to this part of the window and overtype it with only the amount you're applying. In this case, the most we can apply is the amount of the deposit, $60. So again, click the check mark for which one it is and then come down here to clarify the money amount by overtyping in the amount field the amount you need. Push the tab key to seal the deal, and then when you click Add to QuickBooks, you might get this message, but don't worry. Now I promise I'm going to circle back to this message, which you don't even have to worry about, and I'm going to add 3 minutes to this video to explain this message. But except for this message, we're done. Click the check mark here, change the money amount down here, and click OK. Okay, of course it always suggests a rule. I don't want it to follow the rule, so I'm going to shut that. Now look, when we come back here, we still see May 9th, we still see May 2nd, but we don't see May 8th because that one was added to QuickBooks. And I can check that by clicking here. Okay, here, where's the May 8th? If you come up to the section of May, there's the May 8th deposit for $60 added from the QuickBooks Center, the Bank Feed Center. And to check to be sure which invoice it was applied to, I can click Open Invoice, and you can see, instead of saying $660 here, for the July 11th invoice number 2, it only says $600. That's because that $60 deposit was applied. I can open up this invoice, and I can click Reports, and I can click Transaction History, and you can see that it was $660, and that we applied $60 to the May 8th payment of $60, and that's why it brought the balance down to $600. Now folks, the video is technically over, and if you're able to repeat my actions and apply the deposits to the invoices, then you should just do it. But some students are going to want to know more about that message we got when we clicked, to finally save the transaction and apply the deposit. Well, With customer deposits, QuickBooks does two steps in one. First, it records the deposit, it records the payment from the customer into undeposited funds. Then it immediately records a deposit from the undeposited funds into the bank account, the one you are reviewing at that moment. The way to understand this is to look at the journal. I have set up my journal so that it shows every transaction in the order in which it was entered into the computer, and I also have it in reverse order so that the most recent transactions are right on the top, and you'll see two transactions that literally happened at the same time. Let me show you. Here's my transaction journal, and you can see the most recent ones are on the top because I'm recording everything today on July 13th. Then it goes down to July 12th and so on. And you can see the last two entries were what we just did a moment ago. We just recorded a $60 deposit and we applied it to the invoices. Now, this column shows the date and time that it was entered. And you can see the second to last transaction that was just entered was the payment. QuickBooks does this and puts it into undeposited funds so that it's able to apply the payment to the proper invoice. If we double click, this is what it looks like. And it put it against this invoice and it put it towards undeposited funds. Now notice that happened at 4:53 p.m. and 15 seconds. And then literally 1 second later, 4:53 and 16 seconds, it made this deposit where it physically deposited or recorded it as a deposit from that particular payment. So these two basically happened at the same time when we clicked record. It went into undeposited funds, then it went from undeposited funds to the bank account in the blink of an eye. And that's the way it does it. You can prevent this by changing the default payment account in the preferences window. And again, we're getting a little off topic, but if you did this, edit, preferences, and went to payments, company preference, you could remove the check mark from undeposited funds here. Then when you click OK, now if you do the very same thing, you won't get two transactions and you won't get that message. It will go directly into the bank account. And to be honest, these last 3 minutes of this video probably won't make any difference.
Chapter 10. Using Advanced Mode.
The Advanced Mode in QuickBooks Desktop Bank Feeds has additional features that the Express Mode does not. First, you can add a customer or a job to a transaction that you downloaded before you record it into your QuickBooks records. You can also add a class to a transaction that's in the review list waiting to be recorded. And the review list itself allows you to search through the text fields. Fields like description, memo, class, and vendor have text that you can search through to look for specific transactions if you want to record those specific transactions together. And lastly, it allows you to make rules that can put in customer job and put in class when the rules are executed. But rules are a topic for another video. So in this video, we will address and demonstrate these first 3 sets of functionality, and the video that follows this one will show all about the more complex and advanced rules. When you open the bank feeds in advanced mode, this is what it looks like. And of course, it's very similar to express mode. The names of the columns are mostly the same. But the first thing you might notice is that bank memo and downloaded as are now separated instead of next to each other. And we learned in this course that those are simply 2 halves of the bank description field split into 2 separate fields into the review list. And I don't know why they separated them by payee,
but you can see the text of one continues into the text of the other. Except for the bank memo field being split, or the description field being split by the payee field, the only other major difference in advanced mode is the corner here, where you have 3 additional icons for 3 additional features that you can use with advanced mode. Now, let's make sure that you can switch to advanced mode from express mode in the preferences window, and then we'll demonstrate all 3 of those features. Make sure you click Edit, Preferences. The category of preferences is checking, and within the checking preferences category, click the Company Preferences tab. That will allow you to change from whatever mode you're already in to advanced mode, and make sure advanced mode is chosen. Then when you click OK, you can click Banking, Bank Feeds, Bank Feed Center, and you can see now it will open in advanced mode. The first of those features that we will demonstrate is the filter tool. It's the funnel looking icon on the right hand side right here in the review list. If you click on it, you will open the filter tool window. And it's the filter tool window that allows you to isolate transactions between specific dates, so you can see only the transactions between the from date and the to date that you set. So you can review and examine those transactions more closely. You could filter even further by isolating only the deposits or only the checks between those dates. For example, let's filter all the transactions between October 1 and October 7 of 2021. And when we find only those transactions, let's put in the category as the expense account, Ask My Accountant, because we're imagining that we don't know what category to put until we talk to the accountant. So in the center right, we click the funnel looking object, and we'll select the from date to be back in October, October 1, the to date to be October 7th, and then when we click away and hit enter and close the filter window, you can see we have now only transactions on the review list. So even though there are 541 transactions here on the review list, it's only these 6 that are now showing up on the review list when we scroll up and down, because only these 6 match the filter that we're looking for. Now here's the beautiful thing. Once you find what you need, you can enter them all at once. So if I know that they are all going to be categorized with the expense account called Ask My Accountant, then all I have to do is choose Ask My Accountant for each of these, or whatever expense you would normally put. And once you've categorized them, because you've isolated the specific ones that you want to categorize, all you have to do is make sure that for the ones that are selected with the filter, you click the top left box to select all of the ones in the filter. Now, even though this says 541, it's going to be 6 fewer after we actually batch record this set. And at the bottom we click back at batch actions, just like we learned before, add and confirm. And now 6 transactions were added, and that means there's only 535 left in the review list. You may notice that the review list looks empty, and you may also notice the little green dot in the top right of the filter. That's because you must clear the filter to see the rest of the items on the review list again. So if you see nothing in the review list and you see this little green dot, you have to click to open it up, and at the bottom right, click Clear. Once you clear the filter and close the window, all of the other 535 transactions will come back to the review list. The other very helpful feature that has been added to the advanced mode of the review list is the search tool. That's the bar in the center right that you see down here. It will allow you to search for specific text in specific transactions. If you click on it and you type in the text that you're looking for, the review list will show you all transactions that have that specific text in the vendor field or the downloaded as field or the bank memo field. And as you remember, these last two fields were two halves of the bank's description field. So basically any specific text that was in the bank description can be searched for with this bar. For example, let's imagine we want to find every appearance of the number 333 regardless of where it is. And once we find it, we'll record it by using the Ask My Accountant expense account. So all you have to do is go to the search field and type in 333 and hit enter. Notice, of all 535 transactions in the review list, only 3 of them fit that description. You can see in the first one, even though the column is a little cut off, that if I make the column a little wider, you can see downloaded as has the 333 right here in the middle transaction and the 333 right here in the last transaction. But if I pull back a little and see the bank memo field, I can see that the top one has 333 right at the beginning. And you can make sure that these characters are in either or both of those fields. And again, we know that once you find what you're looking for, you can enter them all at once before you clear them. So I can put in the account I want, Ask My Accountant, Ask My Accountant, and Ask My Accountant, or whatever expense account goes there, and as long as you click the top box in the left, all of the items that were selected by the search will be chosen, and you can go back, Batch Actions, Add Confirm, and now 3 have been entered, and there's only 532 remaining to be entered. Now the search tool is similar to the filter in one very important way. You must clear the search bar to see the rest again. So once you've done a search, you're not going to see any of the others until you click this X right here. Then when you click the X, you take off the search criteria and you can see all the rest of the transactions that were downloaded, so you can enter them as you please. Now the third new icon in the advanced review list is the cogwheel. That gives you the ability to add a column of data so you can record more information when recording from the review list. If you click on the cogwheel, the Add Column window will open up. And if you look closely at the Add Column window, the blue check marks are the ones that are there, and the blank boxes are the ones you can add. We can add a column for customer job just by clicking in the box. It's very simple. We click the cogwheel and just click Customer Job. After I click the box, that field appears even before I close the column window. So I close the column window and you can see Customer Job is now available. Now we can also add a column for class. But in order to add a column for class and to have that choice available, you must activate class tracking in the Preferences window. So from the top left, we click Edit, Preferences. Make sure you click the Accounting Preferences and Company Preferences to be able to click the check mark to add class tracking for transactions and click OK. Now, as soon as you do that, you will notice that class tracking has been added. Well, class tracking is now available in the cog wheel. So when we open the cog wheel, we are now physically able to add class because class has been activated. And notice, as soon as I click the check mark, the class field is added as an extra piece of information that you can record before I even close the column window. And because we are not really doing a lesson on classes, but because we want to add classes in our next example when we get to rules, let's just remind ourselves how to put classes on the class list. From the top left, we click List, Class List. Then in the bottom left, we click Class, New, and type in Class A. Enter. And again, Class, New, B. Now, when we reopen our review list by clicking Banking, Bank Feeds, Bank Feed Center, we now see in the column of class, we now see that we can click and we can choose a class to add to the transaction before we record.
Chapter 11. Making Advanced Rules.
The additional functionality of the advanced mode allows you to make rules that can add a customer job to a transaction and also allows you to add a class to a transaction. But what would be considered an advanced rule? An advanced rule would be a rule with more than one condition and have two ways to operate. You could make an advanced rule with one additional condition by using an end statement, which means all conditions in the rule must be true in order for the transaction to be recorded with that rule. The other way to make a complex rule is to use an or statement. That means that any one of the conditions listed in the rule must be true in order for that transaction to be recorded with that rule. End statements, what does that mean? It means the rules must have all conditions true in order for a transaction to be recorded with that rule. For example, let's imagine we want to record all the transactions that start with the word ATM and also do not contain the word withdrawal. That's the rule. You see, if we look right now at the review list and we type in the word ATM, we can filter with just that word, and you can see that many of them have the word withdrawal in them, but many do not. Notice down here, this does not. Notice down here, this does, but if you keep going, you'll get to ones that don't. We want only the ones that start with ATM, but do not contain the word withdrawal. So since both conditions must be true, it has to start with ATM and also not contain the word withdrawal in order for that transaction to be recorded with that rule. So once we determine this, what do we want the rule to do? We want the rule to change the payee of the transaction to Staples, and we want to change the account on the rule to supplies. And thirdly, because we're in advanced mode, we want to change the customer job to Eddie Edwards. Now, if we come up here and click Rule, and we get the rule list, in the top right, we click Add Rule. Now, we can name it ATM as the name of the rule, and that's fine. But What exactly are we looking at here? Well, you can see that the top section has the text that the rule is based on, whereas the bottom section of this window determines what you want, or this is the place that you tell QuickBooks, this is what you want the rule to do to any transaction that fits the conditions above. Now, of course, we have to name the rule in order to save it on the list. And of course, this rule is in regard to money out because it discusses ATM withdrawals and so on. But this is the most important choice to make. And you will see making this choice determines how the rule behaves. So we want the rule to make it such that it will record the things we want it to record if the transaction description field or any of the text fields mentioned begin with the word ATM. And now we have to add the second condition. Look what happens when we click Add Line. The word OR shows up here. Now we don't want it to record the transaction in the way we're going to describe if it has either ATM or does not contain the word withdrawals. Because if we leave it with OR, it means that if something simply does not contain the word, here, look, does not contain the word spelled exactly like that, that means if we leave it as any, if we leave it with an OR statement, it means that every single transaction on the list that simply does not have this word anywhere in the text fields will be recorded with this rule. And that's not right. We want transactions only that have ATM and also do not have the word withdrawals. So by changing the criteria to all, we have made this an AND statement instead of an OR statement, which means both of these things must be true for the transaction to be changed and recorded under this rule that we're making now. It has to begin with the word ATM and not contain the word withdrawals. Now, down here we're going to tell it what we want it to do. Make the payee staples, because we take out cash to buy supplies, and that's why we're going to make the account become supplies expense. And the customer that relates to that, or the job that relates to that, would be Eddie Edwards from the pull-down list. So this is what the rule will look like, and in the bottom right, you would click Save. And when we come back to the bank feeds window, we can see that 6 out of the 570 some odd transactions were changed by that specific rule. 568 still remain the same way that they were, but we can click here as soon as we save the rule. Any of the transactions that are under that rule will show up in the recognized instead of the unrecognized. And notice they're all selected by click because it clicks the top left automatically for you. But before you select it, you should notice that all of the payees have been changed to staples. See? All of the accounts for each of these 6 transactions have been changed to supplies expense. And the customer job was changed to Eddie Edwards under Dave Deeney. So it's a little squashed. I think I might be able to open it up and show you. If you make the column wider, first of all, you can see that only the ones that have the word AT&T and do not have the complete word withdrawal, because it cuts it off here, you have to be careful. The rule is according to the text. But what you'll notice is it followed the rule by making all of the payee staples, all of the categories of the accounts become the supplies expense account here, and the customer job, Dave Deeney. So we're a little out of room, but you can see it's Dave Deeney, it's Eddie Edwards under Dave Deeney. So you might have a little trouble opening up the width to really see the names of the columns, but basically it fulfills the criteria of the rule. Now, if you want to enter all of these, of course, it's very simple. We learned in previous videos that of the ones that are following the rule or filter or whatever can be all selected and deselected. So if you click recognize these 6, that means when you click the top check mark, only these 6 are recognized. Click batch actions, add confirm, and then click yes, and then they all get recorded. And you have 568 to work with to make other rules to enter them quickly as well. Now let's try an example with an OR statement. An OR statement is a rule that must have any condition true in order for a transaction to be recorded with that rule. For example, let's imagine we want to record all the transactions that start with the word check or contain the word fee. Now, what does that mean? It means that if it only starts with the word check but does not contain the word fee, it will still be included when it's recording all the transactions in that rule. What else does it mean? It means even if it does not start with the word check, if it does contain the word fee, that means that it will also be included in the rule because at least one condition was true. Of course, if both conditions are true and it contains both, then obviously that transaction will be included with the rule. And if you're using an OR statement, it means that in order for a transaction to not be in the rule, both of them have to be not true. So only transactions that do not start with the word check and do not contain the word fee will not be included in the rule if the rule contains an OR statement. So what do we want the rule to do? We want the rule to change the payee to Chase. We want the rule to change the account to bank fees expense. And we also want to change the class to Class B. And these are the things that we want the rule to do as soon as we save the rule on the list. So again, we click Rules, Add Rule, and this one would be called Chase Fee. Now, again, it relates to money out because we're talking about fees, but instead of choosing all, this time we make sure we choose any. And the description should contain the word fee, and it can also either begin with the word check. So notice it says any of these conditions, which means it can either contain the word fee or begin with the check. And what do we want it to do? We want to rename the payee to Chase. We want to put it as the category of bank fees expense down here, and the class that it will belong to is Class B. So now we made a rule that will apply to a class or make it choose a specific class. Now when we save the rule, the interesting part happens when we close the rule list and we come back, that 35 of the transactions were changed by this rule. Here are the ones that were not changed by the rule, and when we click in the left center the word recognized, we can see the 35 transactions that were changed by this rule. Notice they all have the payee as Chase, they all have the account bank feeds, and they're all in Class B. And they're all selected by clicking this top check mark here. So all 35 can be entered at once, batch actions, add confirm, and then just click yes for the warning message. And you can see these 35 have now been entered successfully into the register and into the QuickBooks records. Click OK, and now you're free to make another rule for the remaining ones until they all get recorded quickly and easily.
Chapter 12. Applying transactions to invoices and bills.
With the new advanced functionality of QuickBooks Desktop Bank Feeds, you can now properly record advanced payments, prepayments, and job deposits downloaded from the bank. You can record them in a way that credits the customer's balance and can be applied to a future invoice. So who exactly is this great for? Well, it's great for landlords because they get paid from their tenants in advance and they have to apply a rent invoice to that payment later on. What about contractors that get a down payment for the job and then have to apply an invoice to that down payment later on? Attorneys almost always get their money up front and then they bill the client and they are required to show that they applied the advanced payment to the invoice or bill that they sent the client. And even real estate service management companies can use the advanced feature of bank feeds in order to record receiving payment from tenants of landlords and applying that to an invoice later. Basically, anyone who gets paid before giving the service and must apply the payments to a future invoice can greatly benefit from this new functionality. So how exactly do we record the advance payment that was downloaded? Well, you would record it exactly the same way that you would record any other downloaded or imported transaction. There's only two simple rules. First, you must put the customer's name or the job name in the payee field. Then you have to make sure that you put the correct accounts receivable account in the account field. That's it. Then QuickBooks will generate a credit to their balance that you can apply to a future invoice. For example, let's imagine that I have a $105 deposit that I received on October 29th from Carmen LLC, and this is an advance payment for a job deposit for a future service. On the day in the future that the service is given, we intend to make an invoice and apply it to that future service. So here's the deposit in question. It's $105 on 10/29. First, we have to put the name of the company or the job in the payee field. Secondly, we have to choose the appropriate accounts receivable account. Remember, if you're a landlord or an attorney or a property management service company, you have several accounts receivable type of accounts. So you have to make sure you know the reason for the deposit to record it in the appropriate receivable type of account. Then you click Batch Actions, Add Confirm, and sure enough, it has been added to the customer's balance. And you can check this by opening the customer balance detail and scrolling to that particular customer, and now you can see Carmen LLC has a negative balance that's waiting to be applied to a future invoice. And now let's make that future invoice and see what happens. Let's imagine on November 15th, we did $500 of steam cleaning work for Carmen LLC. We will make an invoice and apply that deposit that we made from the bank feeds. Well, it's very simple. We already know how to make an invoice. So from the top here, we click invoice, and we fill out the invoice. It's Carmen LLC. Of course, the date was November 15th. The item was steam cleaning, and the amount of the invoice is $500. But remember, we have this credit from Carmen LLC from the bank feeds. So we then click Apply Credits, and we click Yes, and now we get a list of available credits for that particular customer. Now, in this case, there's only one, but if there were several, they would be listed here, and you would click the check mark on the credit you want to use. Click Done, and now you can see on the invoice was $500. You just applied the past downloaded credit of $150, and now they only owe, $105, and now they only owe $395. Save and close. And if we open the Open Invoice Report, you can see that there's only a $395 balance for that invoice for Carmen LLC because the invoice was applied to that downloaded deposit payment. And on the customer balance detail, you can see the details. Here's what we downloaded, here's what we billed, and here's the difference. So if you are a landlord, a contractor, an attorney, or anyone who gets paid in advance, congratulations, you can now use bank feeds.
Chapter 13. Other ways to import.
So in this little course, we will explore every option for QuickBooks Desktop and every option for QuickBooks Online regarding importing transactions. And in this particular video, I'm going to give you a little overview of what your options are so that you're aware of what the options are and you have some sense of what they are. Then, the 4 videos that follow this one will give you clear examples on how to utilize each of those 4 options. First, we'll talk about importing transactions in general. Lists are always easily imported. Lists are not transactions. When I say lists, I mean things like the chart of accounts, the customers, the vendors, and this type of thing. You know, they can be easily exported from one file and imported to another, and you absolutely do not need a video series to import customers or export product lists or services or anything like that. The challenging part of QuickBooks regarding transferring data is importing transactions. Now, third-party software is great. Third-party software does everything, but you have to pay for it in addition to paying for your QuickBooks. In my opinion, the best third-party software that you can buy for importing transactions into either QuickBooks or QuickBooks Online is Z-Access. If you use Z-Access, you can import both to QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. And the great thing about this software is that you can record every last detail of every type of transaction. Now, I'm not trying to sell you Z-Access. I'm making this little video series to prove to you that Z-Access is not always necessary. You should explore the free options that are available that I'm explaining in this little mini-series before deciding to buy Z-Access or any third-party software program. Now, to import transactions into QuickBooks Desktop, there are only 2 options. You can buy and use the Accountant's Edition of QuickBooks Desktop, or you can use IFF files. Now, if you choose to import using the Accountant's Edition, this is really my recommendation. This is really my favorite one, and I can't imagine people not wanting to use this. You could upgrade from your QuickBooks Pro to the Accountant's Edition at approximately the same purchase price as it would be if you bought Z-Access. So instead of going and running out and buying a third-party software, just upgrade your QuickBooks to the Accountant's Edition, and it gives you the ability to import easily and smoothly. And like I said, the difference is the same amount as paying for Z-Access. But the good news is you will have all the other features of the Accountant's Edition, and sometimes those other features really come in handy. So you might want to explore buying the Accountant's Edition, or at least upgrading from your QuickBooks Pro instead of the one you have now if importing transactions is very important to you. You should know that if you use the Accountant's Edition, more than 90% of the transactions that people commonly have can be imported very easily from Excel or any spreadsheet program. Any level of detail that does not import easily into the Accountant's Edition can be input manually. And if you have hundreds of these details, then your business is doing well enough to buy Z-Access or some third-party software. Now, the other option for a desktop is importing IIF files. Now, the great thing about IIF files is there's no need for special software. They're meant to be imported into QuickBooks. And the other great thing is it imports to every desktop version, whether you have QuickBooks Pro, the retail version, the Accountant's Edition, whatever. This file format will import transactions directly into QuickBooks. Another great thing is that it's possible to import every kind of transaction at every level of detail. So if you have transactions with a lot of detail, like what invoices have which payments applied, or which deposits have which receipts being deposited with that deposit, you could use IIF files. But the problem with this type of method is that it involves lots of study time because it's kind of like programming. Usually it winds up taking longer than entering the transactions manually one by one. But the reason it's used is because large companies have programmers that can give you a file to import conveniently. In fact, in my example in the bank feeds, PayPal gives you an IIF file for free for your PayPal activity, and it imports right into any version of QuickBooks Desktop. All you have to do is clarify when you're done. But if you know IIF programming, you can put enough detail so that when you import, you don't have to clarify anything. It's ready to go. Now, importing transactions into QuickBooks Online has two other options, and both of these are imperfect. You could upload from the QuickBooks Desktop version in one click. It's the easiest thing you'll ever do. Or you could use CSV files. The problem with CSV files is they're really meant for bank feeds, and if you're curious how they work, you have two options. You can look at the previous video towards the end of the bank feeds lesson, or you could wait for this lesson to show you again how to import transactions with CSV files. Now, if you upload from the QuickBooks Desktop version, the problem is it will overwrite everything in the QBO account with everything that's on the desktop file, and it will do that every single time you upload the transactions. So even though it's the easiest and it's just one click and you put in your password, you keep losing whatever's up in the cloud in lieu of whatever happens to be in the QuickBooks file that you're uploading. And what's online is lost every time. But some people have both the desktop version and QuickBooks Online, and they do this to keep a record in the desktop version and just upload to the online version so they can log on and find things from remote locations. So you might say, well, why should I pay for that subscription every month? But some people, when they're on the go and they need to log into their information by using the internet, it might be better to pay a few dollars each month and have QuickBooks Online and just upload from your desktop just so that you can find things while you're out. Now, CSV files, again, CSV files can only import into the bank review section, and there are only 3 pieces of information that they can import into your QuickBooks Online: date, description, and amount. You must go through them one by one and reclassify and add detail. And those are your options. I promise you a very clear video explaining each of the 4 options and giving clear examples on how to apply them in the following 4 videos. Thank you for watching, and I wish you good luck importing your transactions.
Chapter 14. How to batch import.
Only the Accountant's Edition has the Batch Enter Transaction window. Here are some things you need to know about batch entering transactions. Number 1, it's the most simple way to import transactions. Over 90% of the transactions that a company typically has will import this way, and you just copy and paste from Excel. So you need to know a little bit about Excel, but very little, because all you're really going to do is copy and paste. Now let's open the window and see how it works. Well, from the main menu in the Accountant's Edition, we click Accountant, Batch Enter Transactions, and we get the Batch Enter Transactions window. Notice there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different kinds of transactions that you can import. But these are the 8 most common and popular transactions that companies usually have. Notice when I choose a different transaction type, the columns become different. That's because different transactions have different fields of information. Now, first you have to choose a transaction type, for example deposits. Then you have to decide which columns of information you're going to copy and paste from Excel. Now, not every transaction requires every field. So if we click this Customize Columns, by the way, we're clicking this Customize Columns at the moment the deposit type of transaction is chosen. So when we choose the transaction type, we get columns that QuickBooks suggests. But then when we click Customize Columns, we have choices to add additional information. If we want to add, a column for cleared, and that happens to be information that's in our Excel file that we're copying and pasting from, we can click on it and click Add, and it will add the cleared column. Then when I click OK, you'll see there's an additional column to tell us whether the deposit has cleared or not. If I want to remove it, I again click Customize Columns. I can click on the column I want to remove, and then I click Remove. Notice you can also change the order of the columns. If I click on Date and I click Move Down, Move Down, Move Down, and then I click OK, notice Date has been moved over here. So this Customize Column button is the most important thing because it not only gives you the ability to add or remove whatever fields of information you have when you copy and paste, but it also gives you the ability to change the order of the columns so that it matches the Excel spreadsheet that you're copying and pasting from. Please note, some columns cannot be removed. It depends on the transaction type, and each transaction type is different. For example, when it comes to checks, if you choose checks and you click Customize Columns, you can see that the 3 columns that I have remaining here do not have the Remove choice available. I can click here to add a cleared column, add a billable column. I can pretty much add any column that's in the Write a Checks window. And when I click OK, and click OK here, click OK. Yeah, we also have to choose customer if we're going to make it billable, so we'll add customer. Okay, so now I have all these columns, and if I had an Excel spreadsheet that had all of this information, a piece of information for each check, for each of these columns, I could copy and paste from Excel. And of course, I could also change the order of these columns, move down, quantity move up, whatever I need, until the columns are arranged in the order in which I need them to be. But notice what happens. When I click Account, the Remove choice is not available. It's not available for amount. For cleared, I'm allowed to remove that. But date, I'm not allowed to remove. Billable, I am allowed to remove. Cost, I am allowed. Item, I can remove. Customer, I can remove. Quantity, I can remove. But these three, I can't. And the columns that you cannot remove will all depend on the transaction type that you choose in the top right. Now, before we actually copy and paste transactions from Excel, let's set up the journal report. And the reason I want you to set up the journal report in the way that I'm showing is because it's the best way to clearly see if transactions have been entered and if they've been entered properly. So, step one, let's open the journal report. From the main menu, we click Reports, Accountant and Taxes, Journal. Now, what's next? Well, let's select all dates. That'll help us find what we're looking for. So, all dates. I hope you're following step by step. Now let's sort the journal by transaction number and put it in descending order. What that will do is that will bring the most recently entered transactions to the top of the journal. Sort by transaction number in descending order. So we're going to click Customize Report from the top left, and we're going to click Sort By, and we'll choose Transaction Number, and Sort By, we'll sort in descending order. Now when I click OK, you can see transaction 246 was the last one, 245, 244, 243, etc. Now the journal looks the way we need it to look. So let's save it up in the icon bar so we can access it very easily. View, add journal to the icon bar. Now, even if you were not doing batch enter transactions, I recommend to all my clients that you set up the journal this way. Because if you're entering many different kinds of transactions, you need to know where you left off and which ones were entered and which ones were not. By doing it this way, the most recent ones are right at the top, and you know if they were entered and how they were entered. Now here is the Excel spreadsheet that we're going to copy and paste from. In this case, they're invoices. And these are the column names, which I'll put in red, just so that you know you should not copy and paste the column headings, only the data. And you should know that I set this up as invoices, and right now these column headings match the invoice choice in QuickBooks in the enter batch transaction window. So if we choose invoice, you can see date, number, customer, amount, item, quantity, rate, and total. Date, number, customer, amount, item, quantity, rate, and of course I didn't bother putting total because QuickBooks will calculate that. So I matched the columns before I started this video, but you will know how to match the columns by doing what I just showed. Now, before we copy and paste all of those invoices, I just have to quickly mention what the rules are for entering batch transactions. Number one, the columns must be aligned. That's also called mapping. But I showed how you're able to do that in QuickBooks, and you can also do that by going to your Excel spreadsheet and using your Excel knowledge to change the order of the columns. The date format must be here. Two spaces for the month, 2 characters for the day, and 4 characters for the year, separated by the /. So my Excel spreadsheet already has the date in the proper format. If you put the date in a different date format, or you put in a different number format, you will not be able to record the transactions and you will get an error. There are different types of date formats. If I click here, and you can see it's the date. If I choose the date to this type of format, so open it up a little, it will not work when you copy and paste from Excel. Now, the second rule is there's only one item per transaction. Unfortunately, you cannot import you cannot import an invoice or a check or a credit or any transaction that has items in the body of the transaction where there's more than one per transaction. So if you notice, invoice number 661 only has 5 of the education service, nothing more. The next invoice has 6 of the web services, and so on. Now, you can try, just for illustration purposes, I'm going to make these 2 invoice numbers the same, because some people think that if you make the document number the same, QuickBooks will put the 2 different items on the same invoice. It will not. They will be recorded as 2 separate invoices that happen to have the same invoice number. So unfortunately, if it's a check, credit, or invoice, you cannot put more than one item in a transaction. Now, all names in the field must be spelled exactly as they are spelled in the QuickBooks file. If there's even 1 character difference, the transaction will not be entered, and it will just stay there in the batch transaction field, in the batch transaction window, until you fix it and make it the correct spelling. So, now let's copy and paste from Excel, and the example we're doing is invoices. So here we are back at the invoices, and here we are back at the enter batch transaction window for QuickBooks. And once you have the columns aligned, it's very, very simple. You simply highlight with click and drag the data part. Let's go all the way down here. Oh, by the way, I want to bring your attention to invoice number 669. Instead of putting quantity and rate, I left those blank and put amount, because when you make an invoice, you're allowed to put only an amount instead of quantity and rate. And that also holds true for copying and pasting from Excel. So we copy only the data, not the column headings. We come to QuickBooks, we click in the top left corner. Now, I suggest we remove the number suggestion and the date suggestion that QuickBooks gives us. And now that it's blank and the cursor is in the top left field, very simple. Right click, paste, and all of the information gets immediately copied here. Now notice what happened here. I purposely misspelled the name of the item, and it's highlighted in red. That means when I click Save Transactions, this will not be saved. So watch. Oh, notice there's a guy named Dave who I also didn't put on the customer list. You can fix this very easily by clicking before you click Save Transaction. But watch. Let's only fix Dave. Click here, click up here, and then click Add New. Dave. That's all you have to do. Click OK, and now the red, it no longer highlights in red because Dave is on the list. But education instead of education is not on the list. Okay, now we could add an item education, but let's not. Let's click Save Transactions, click Yes, and it says 8 out of the 9 have been saved, and we click OK. Now, this one has not been saved, and it remains on the list because of the misspelling. But before we correct it, let's make sure the other ones were really entered. Let's open the journal report, and you can see 669 was entered here. Okay, 667, 666. Well, why was 668 skipped? Because 668 was not entered. 668 had the misspelling, which we'll fix instantaneously in a moment. But look, here's 666, 665, 664, and they're all invoices. And if you double-click on any of them, you get exactly what you saw when you copied and pasted from Excel. So you can see anything from 669 going all the way down, anything from 669 down to, I guess, 661 were just recently entered from Excel. Now, let's fix this. you can click here. If you agree with the quick add, would you like to add it now? Yes. You come to the item window and click service, but unfortunately you have to choose which income account goes with that service. So let's cancel it and let's simply spell it correctly. Okay, now that it's spelled correctly, we're allowed to save it. Okay, or we can simply remove it. You see, we can just choose the proper item spelled properly, and then it will let us record it. And now when we come back to the journal, you see 666 was recorded, the most recent, because I just recorded it right now. And as you can see, it's at the very top of the journal. Now we record credits in exactly the same place that we record invoices. And you may well ask, how does QuickBooks know it's a credit? Well, if you're using the quantity and the rate column must be negative. Now I know that sounds strange, but I already tried on the phone with a QuickBooks Tech Support Pro Advisor person to make only the quantity column negative. And when I tried to save it, it popped it back to positive. But if you make the rate column negative, it will record it as a credit instead of an invoice. And if you're using only the amount column instead of quantity and rate, as I mentioned you were allowed to, then the amount must be negative. So when we come back here to our Excel file, these last two on the bottom, I put the amount as negative. And I put the amount as negative so that QuickBooks will know that this is, these are credits. And I didn't bother with the rate or with the quantity. But I'll do another example with rate and quantity just to show you which one has to be negative. So we highlight this, click copy, come back to QuickBooks. Now I'm going to open the Enter Batch Transactions, choose Invoice and Credits, and again go to the top left, remove the number suggestion that QuickBooks suggests, and remove the date, click Paste. Now, notice the amount stayed negative and QuickBooks filled in the rate. But don't worry, if the amount is negative, QuickBooks knows that this is a credit. Save the transaction, click Yes, two have been saved. Now to check that they've been recorded properly, open the journal and they're right on top. 671 and 670 are both credit memos. And if I double click, you can see it's a credit memo because we put the amount as negative from the Excel spreadsheet. Now to illustrate that last point, I made two additional credits where one of them has the negative number in the rate column, that's this one, the one to Joe, and the one to Sally has the negative number in the quantity column. Now let's highlight both of them and see which one QuickBooks accepts and which one QuickBooks will not accept. Open the batch transaction window for invoices and credits. Okay, remove the number suggestion and the date suggestion. Paste. Now notice, okay, this one, the rate was negative, but it flipped it over to make the quantity negative. Don't touch it. Let it do what it needs to do. But with this one, as you remember, the 7, the quantity was negative, and QuickBooks, the crazy thing, removed the negative and just kept it this way. So you have to type in the negative yourself, and then click Save Transaction, yes, and then they both went in as credits, and you can prove that by coming to the top of the journal. For Sally and Joe, they both went in as credits. So that's somewhat unusual behavior, but you'll get used to it and you'll work around it as you do batch enter transaction.
Chapter 15. How to import Web Connect files.
With Web Connect files, there's no need to connect online. Web Connect files can be directly imported into the Bank Feed Center. The format that you download from your bank is either QBO or QFX file extension. It doesn't really matter which one. They're exactly the same thing and they cause the same result. And most banks make them available free. There's no need to connect through bank feeds if you're able to download these files from your bank. When you import this type of file that you download from your bank, the result is exactly the same as downloading through bank feeds. This means, the review window looks and behaves exactly the same. The only advantage to doing it with Web Connect files instead of connecting with bank feeds is that if you click ignore and you delete one of the transactions from the review list, you can re-import from the Web Connect file and it will put it back on the review list, and you don't have to worry about entering it manually or any other kind of problem. So let me show you how one would download a QBO file to be able to import it to QuickBooks, and I'll use my Chase bank account as an example. So here I am in my Chase bank account. As you can see, I'm very unsuccessful in business and in life. But if you zoom in on a particular account to see its activity, you can go to the right where it says I'd like to, and one of the choices is download account activity. Now, I scroll down here because I read all the warnings and all the stuff that your bank makes you read, and I click continue. Now it's asking me the date range, and it's asking me which particular bank account is supposed to be downloaded. I want to download all available transactions for this business checking account. Now, when it says select download type, as I mentioned before, QFX and QBO will have the exact same result. It will go into your bank feed center. The transactions will be on the review list exactly the same as if you downloaded it through bank feeds. But in my example, I'm going to choose a QBO. Now when I click download activity, all right, let's see what happens. You can't see, maybe you can see here on the bottom left, I'm using Google Chrome. So the file is called JPMC, probably stands for JP Morgan Chase, 2. So when I click show in folder, I could find where it is, and I can click copy. So that's the file that's in my downloads folder, by the way, folks. See, it went into my downloads folder, and all I'm going to do is copy that file, that JPMC file, from my bank account here. From the downloads. I'm going to copy it right on. I'm going to paste it right onto my desktop. See? And here it is on my desktop. Now that it's on my desktop, I'm going to import it into QuickBooks. Please note, you cannot import bank activity from a QBO file into an account that is already connected through bank feeds. So that means that if I open my chart of accounts, you can see I have three different accounts that are bank type of accounts. Now the lightning bolt next to the other two is indicating that these two have already been connected by bank feeds. So the only one available to import the QBO file into is this middle one here, new bank account, because it allows either or, but not both. So let's go ahead and import. So here, let's do this. We're going to click File, Utilities, Import, and then go Web Connect File. So these are the menu choices in QuickBooks to import. Now we have to look on the desktop, and we're looking for the one that said JPMC. There it is. This was the file that I just downloaded from my bank account a moment ago. When I double click, okay, it's going to ask me, should I create a new account or use an existing bank account? Now this is interesting. When I click use an existing bank account, the only one that's available is the new bank account. Why? Because it's the only bank type of account that's not already connected through bank feeds. So we click continue and wait a moment, and you will see this message confirms that the result in the Bank Feed Center is exactly the same as if I downloaded through Bank Feeds. Click OK. Now I'm going to click, oh, the Bank Feed Center opens, and where it says New Bank Account, I can click on it, open the transaction list, and you can see. In fact, not only is it the same result in the review, but all the rules we set up before automatically even change some of the ones that were imported. It's literally the exact same thing as importing it from the bank feeds. Now I could just conclude the video right here, but I want to show you something great. If you accidentally ignore, which means delete, a transaction from the review list, you can bring it back by importing the file again. Now, that's not a big deal if you only deleted 1 or 2. But if you accidentally deleted 50 or accidentally removed 100 from your review list, you would not want to re-enter them manually. It's nice to be able to re-import the file and have everything come back to the way it was. For example, let's ignore, which means delete, the newest one, the July 11th deposit for $200. So here we are, the July 11th deposit for $200. Let's click here and then click ignore. Now, of course, we get a warning message, and then we click yes. Now, what happened over here in the date column was that as soon as I clicked yes, and I don't know why QuickBooks did this, but as soon as I click yes, it changed the order of the transactions from oldest on top to newest on the bottom. Click here twice. You have to click twice in order to get back the order that was there before, which is the newest transactions on top and the oldest ones on bottom. So that's a little bit of a distraction from our point, but you can see now that it's newest to oldest, July 11th is gone. It is not in the review list anymore. But now we'll import the file again, and we'll bring back the July 11th for $200. File, Utilities, Import, Web Connect Files, find the JP Morgan Chase, click Open, and give it a moment. And now you get the same confirmation message that you got before. When you click OK, this new bank account has a transaction list. Now again, make sure the date is clicked on twice, or maybe 3 times, so that you can get the newest ones on top and the oldest ones going down. And look, now you can see the July 11th $200 deposit has been placed back on the list. So that's something that's a great advantage over the bank feeds. You can put something back. Now, I want to add one qualification to what I just showed you. If you accept it into QuickBooks as a transaction, it will not reload into the review list again when you import. So remember, if you remove it by deleting it or ignoring it, it'll come back in. But if you put it in QuickBooks, it will not come back. And I'm going to prove that to you. I'm going to say Quick Add. It's going to say Choose an Account. See, it keeps flipping the date back to the other order. But actually, yeah, okay. So it's in QuickBooks. In fact, if I open my transaction journal, I can see that it just has been recorded just now. And so now that it's been recorded, it still won't come back. It just went into uncategorized income because I didn't choose an account. But if I do this, if I do the utilities import again, I just want to prove a point that if I put back this file, it will now not bring back the July 11th because it has been put into QuickBooks. It says no new transactions. See, when I come here and I make sure the date is newest to oldest, July 5th instead of July 11th. I re-imported and it did not come back. That's because I didn't delete it. I put it into QuickBooks. Now, even if you delete it from QuickBooks, it won't come back. Look, I'm going to show you. We go to the journal. Let me go ahead and let me delete this from QuickBooks. It's gone. Now I'm going to try again to import it and see if it'll put it back on the review list. JP Morgan Chase. Again, the last third of this video is just making a point. But if you know how to do it from the steps, then you're okay. Transaction list. Make sure the dates go newest to oldest. See, it did not come back. So that's the principles of working with Web Connect files.
Chapter 16. Importing with IIF files.
There are some nice things about importing IIF files. You don't need any third-party software. You can import every possible type of transaction that goes into QuickBooks, and in those transactions, you can put a piece of information in every available data field. It will import into any version of QuickBooks Desktop, whether it's QuickBooks Pro or QuickBooks Accountant or QuickBooks Retail, doesn't matter. The problem is it takes study time and practice, and you have to learn code almost as if you're learning programming. You also have to know some basic accounting like debits and credits in order to really understand what you're looking at. You can use an Excel spreadsheet to create your IIF file, which we're going to do now, or actually which I have already done to prepare for this video. You input the specific code like programming, and then you input the data, which are the details of the transactions. So let me show you the file that I created. This is an Excel spreadsheet called IIF Learning, but it's in Excel. Now what you do is you type in the specific code with the specific text up here, to the left and on the side, and then in the center is the actual data that gets imported as transactions into QuickBooks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn red. I'm going to turn all of the code items to red because changing the color won't make a difference. Now you can see the code that you need to study and learn and memorize are in red, and what's remaining in black is the actual data that will go into the fields of the transactions. QuickBooks will know what type or what kind of transaction it is based on the data. And what you're looking at here in amount are the debits and the credits. So as I said a moment ago, you have to understand a little bit about the idea of debits and credits to be able to understand what the IIF file is doing. And basically, here's the data. So this would be the date of the first transaction. These would be the accounts and the chart of accounts that change. And this would be the money amounts of that transaction. Same thing here. Here's the date for that transaction. Here's the account for that transaction. Here's the name of the person involved in the transaction, such as the vendor or the customer or whatever. And of course here are the money amounts with some other information. Now we have the memo field all the way here. Now I'm going to prove to you that you have the ability to change the data before it goes into QuickBooks. So for the first transaction on January 4th, instead of $20, let's make it $440. So you have one minus 444 and you have one positive 444. That comes from the ideas of debits and credits. And let's add to this memo the word hello. Now what about the second transaction on July 17th, where the two accounts are PayPal and other expenses, and the name is Netflix? Let's leave Netflix as the name of the vendor in this case. But instead of $65, let's put minus 555, and where it's positive, let's put positive 555. So we change some of the data, and after it imports into QuickBooks, you'll see those are the money amounts. Now, for the February 18th, back in 2016, these are the two accounts that change, PayPal and other income. But instead of 110 and a negative 110, let's put, by the way, you'll notice the positive this time is on the right and the negative is on the left. because this is a different type of transaction. It's going into income. So as I said, if you studied debits and credits, you would understand why the previous ones on the right were negative, but this one on the right is positive, and the other one is negative. But it doesn't matter. Let's leave the sign. Let's change this to positive 222, just to show we can change the data. Negative 222. So for this second one, we'll put the memo as high, and for the third one, we'll put the memo as blah, blah, blah. So all we did was change the money amounts of the transaction. Everything else was pre-programmed in its proper position. And we added a memo. So when you learn IIF programming, not only do you learn the specific coding and the specific words, but you will learn the specific position in the spreadsheet that the data has to be arranged in order to import smoothly into QuickBooks. Now the name of this file is IIF Learning. So now we've changed the code and we've changed the data, and we're ready to import these 3 transactions into QuickBooks seamlessly. And now we're ready to do the remaining steps. First, we should save the file after the changes. Now, we should save it in TXT format. I found out the hard way you should not save it as an Excel spreadsheet. Leave it as a TXT format that Excel is reading. And again, when you formally study this programming language, IIF, you'll understand why this is. Remember, this video is just a brief overview. Now, we'll use Windows to change the file extension to IIF. So we'll come back to Excel and quit, and now we will find this is it. This right here, let's move this over. This right here is the TXT file that we were looking at from Excel. Now we will rename it with the IIF format. Notice as soon as we change it to the IIF file extension, Windows sees it as a QuickBooks file. So then the next step is import into QuickBooks. So in the top left in the main menu, click File, Utilities, Import, IIF. Now we have to find the IIF file that we just saved, and it was, I think it was IIF Learning. So we double click, and it says, oh, your data has been imported. Very good. Now how can we check to see if the data that we altered has been imported? Well, I arranged my journal to have the most recent transactions right at the top, and when you click there you can see there's the 444 and there's the memo we put, there's the 333 and there's the memo we put, there's the payee. So the 3 recently entered transactions here are the ones that were just entered from the IIF file, and you can see they are altered in the way that we changed them, and that's how they came into QuickBooks. And that's how you do it. So IIF programming is not for everyone. You do need some level of programming skills, and there are a lot more details, but at least this video gave you some sense of what it is, so you can consider it as one of your file transaction import options.
Chapter 17. Do the final project.
This project is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Just download the files, follow the instructions, and compare your results to my results when you finish the project. And you may well ask, where are the files?
If you look down below the table of contents, way at the bottom, you will see that there are links to the files that you can download for the self-checking exercise, where you can check how much you learned and understood from this video by completing the practice material and the self-paced exercise. There's an Excel file with instructions, and it even has transactions that you can import into a blank, brand new QuickBooks desktop file, so that you can use that file exclusively for the practice exercise here.
Now, there are some project setup points that I'd like to mention before you open the project instructions. First, the instructions require that you create a new, blank QuickBooks Desktop Company file to use with this project. The project instructions are in an Excel file that you see listed as one of the 3 downloadable files. Sometimes there are technical issues when importing the files, and I have to mention at the beginning, I did test them before uploading, and I do my best to make sure everyone can use the files. They do work for most people, but if you get an error message when you're trying to import or use any of these files, please contact your Google Tech Support people or Google search for QuickBooks Desktop Support. I do want to help you, but I can only teach the QuickBooks. I can't fix technical issues that are associated with the file, and I hope you have no problem with any of them. When you finish the project, compare your results to mine, and good luck with the project, and I know you will enjoy doing it and enjoy learning from it.